Hello folks, this is Sula speaking. You're listening to another video for Teamfight Tactics. Well, believe it or not, we've gone through the entirety of set 10. It's almost time for a new set to come out. Set 11 is going to be popping up on the public beta environment this week. So I figure it's a good time to do our traditional retrospective, looking back at the course of the set, talking about what worked well, what didn't work well over the course of the set. Spoiler alert, this is going to be pretty positive because I think this is one of the best sets that TFT's ever done. I don't know if this is the best set, but it's certainly on the short list. It's definitely in the running for best sets. So I think this was a huge success, and the sign of how good of a set this was is just the fact that I have played so much of this. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Let's go ahead and get started. This gameplay footage is just going to be in the background, so there's something for people to watch as I'm kind of talking here. This is more of like a podcast than a commentary on this video, but this is from a normal game that I did. I was honestly just looking for some footage to put in the background, but it worked out enough. And the game went well enough, but it's probably not anything too crazy in terms of actual gameplay, just kind of something to watch. Okay, so let's start with the main mechanic in this set, and that, of course, was the headliner mechanic. This was a return of the Chosen mechanic from set 4. Different terminology and some slight differences, but by and large, it was basically the same mechanic brought back again with just a few tweaks here and there. I'm sure that anyone watching this video is probably familiar with this, but if by some chance you're not, the basic mechanic is that every store, if you do not have a headliner, you will have a headliner pop up in the store. So for example, there's a Jinx one here. Those units will pop up as a 2-star unit. So I'm going to take the Nami one right here. They will pop up as a 2-star version, so you don't have to find 3 copies of the unit. They just come as a 2-star already. And they will come with one of their 2 traits doubled. So, for example, I have Nami here. Her traits are Dazzler and Disco. She has gotten the Dazzler trait doubled here. And again, this is the same way that the Chosen mechanic worked. So this was the overall set mechanic, and it just worked great. And the reason why it worked great is because it worked great in set 4 as well. This is still the best mechanic that I think they've ever done. And by the way, there's a Samira here. I could play Country, but I'm actually not looking to play Country because it's not especially strong in the patch that I'm playing right now. So, as I said, this is honestly, I think, the best mechanic that they've ever had, unless you want to count augments, but augments have become so integral to the overall gameplay that they're kind of almost not like worth discussing at this point in time because they're so key to how the gameplay functions. So it's either augments or it's the Chosen / headliner mechanic is really the best that they've ever come up with. And it's pretty easy to see why. Everything about this system works. It encourages people to play flexibly. The idea is that you will see what you're getting in the store, and then you'd like to kind of bend the gameplay of what your team's building around those particular units. So for example here, because I've hit the Nami Dazzler, now I'm going to look to be building a Dazzler team composition around this. I would probably lean more heavily into Disco if I've gotten a Disco Nami, but because I have the Dazzler version, now I can play 4 Dazzlers because I also managed to get a Lux here. We actually have the portal, which is one of my least favorite portals, but just for reference sake, the portal that we have here is the one that twice per stage you just randomly get champions handed to you. I think this is one of the worst portals, and I'll talk more about why that is later on as we go through this, but I just got handed a Lux for free, and so that is going to allow me to play 4 Dazzler when I level up. And I've also gone ahead, by the way, look at me, I actually win that fight, which I did not think I was going to win. I also have taken the Escort quest, which means that I get a training dummy. Every time it survives the fight, I gain an additional 3 gold. So I want to keep that targeting dummy alive if possible. The game's also given me about 1 billion Namis, but there's not really much I can do with all these Namis. I think I'd go ahead and pick this up just because I know I'm going to have to sell the Nami eventually because it's my headliner, and I want to have a replacement Nami ready to go. But yeah, I kind of wish I was getting something other than all these Namis. More Tariks and more Gragas's for frontline would probably be better here. Anyway, though, so as I said, this is just a great mechanic. I said it before, but it just really works as far as trying to promote all the goals that you would want in TFT. I've said over the years many times, TFT is at its best when the player is adapting to what they're getting in the game. They're having to play flexibly. It is at its worst when somebody sits there with like a list of, here are the exact units I want to play, and I'm going to force this over and over and over again in game after game after game. This is one of the reasons why why set 9 didn't really work that well, because set 9 heavily promoted that kind of setup. And Lux is going to get off one more cast to kill one more unit, but don't have quite enough to win this fight because they have multiple 2-stars on their team. And anyway, the Chosen / Headliner mechanic, it just really works well in that regard, because you have to play around the units that you're getting. It was a very bad set for just I'm going to play this one unit and it's going to be the exact same thing in every single game. If you're going to do that, it just wouldn't really work particularly well. So as I said, it was a nice mechanic. The tweaks that they made to this worked really well. So the old Chosen mechanic in set 4, the basic rule was you could not see a Chosen if you had one in your store. And it was also pretty random as far as when they would pop up. You were guaranteed to get 3 of them on stage 2, but like you could get them on 2-3, 2-5, and 2-6. You could actually go all of the early minion rounds without seeing one, N2-1, N2-2, and just never see one. That was pretty silly from an RNG standpoint, that someone could get one of these very powerful Chosen units and you could just not even have one in your store. So they did a good job of improving the overall setup, removing some of the randomness from it. So you would always see a Headliner if you didn't have one, and if you do have one, you get one every 4 shops, and that makes it a little bit easier to transition. And they put some other rules in place under the hood that I'll talk a little bit more about, that were designed to smooth out some of the randomness. Downside was those rules were not really explained, but anyway. So like I said, great mechanic. It really set up the entire set, and it's one of the reasons why this was such a successful set overall. I know that there's some people out there who don't like this mechanic, but I really do think that they're a vocal minority. I think the overwhelming amount of the player base likes this mechanic. And it's been seen because the sets that have used this have had really high player retention rates, and they've had a lot of people playing them. Okay. Next up, other things that I will mention. This is a little bit more basic, but I do think that this set had good trait and unit design overall. It was very clear that more attention went into this set than set 9. Set 9 had a lot of units reused and a lot of traits reused. It was pretty clear that set 9 was most of the developers were working on set 10, and it was kind of like a placeholder set. In retrospect, it's very obvious that that was the case, because this set had a lot more time and focus going into it. But like I said, a lot of fun stuff in terms of the trait and unit design. We had some fun legendary units, things like Jin putting his turrets on the bench. Now, Jin was pretty underpowered throughout the set. I don't think he was that strong of a unit, but a neat mechanic, right? He creates turrets, and the more bench space you have, the more he puts down. I'm thinking of Alawi and her tentacles. She was the top tank for like the entire set. Sona having the 3 different abilities, even though pretty much only people ever used attack speed because the other 2 were so broken on the public beta environment that they got nerfed into the ground. But some just really cool units that were a lot of fun to play. They also had the thing where Akali could be true damage or KDA traits depending on what you were playing, which was a very novel idea. Did have an awful lot of bugs with it. I think that there were like 10,000 different bugs associated with this, but it was a cool idea, to say the least. Definitely was a neat idea. And I have to say, I'm really glad that Karthus was back in this set. Karthus had been in set 1, and then he was not in sets 2 through 9, and then he finally was back again here in set 10. He had one of my least favorite skins. I actually don't like Pentakill very much at all. And I can't say I played a ton of Pentakill in this set, because Pentakill tended to play through Viego a lot. A lot of it was playing through melee carries in Olaf and Viego, and I typically just don't like playing through melee carries very much, just in terms of TFT gameplay. So I didn't play a ton of Pentakill, but I am glad that Karthus was back in this set again. As far as traits go, as I said, some fun traits in this set, definitely. As I said, there clearly was more time and attention put into this. Superfan was a fun trait that interacted with the Headliner mechanic. Now, Superfan was definitely overtuned for most of the set, so it was maybe a little bit too good, but it was still a fun mechanic to have around. The whole idea that like you would have these early game units and you would ideally transition out of them, although there were certainly some comps that stuck with them. 8-bit, another trait that was underpowered, but I like the whole notion that it stacked up over time, and if you could hit the 6 8-bit massive cash out at the end of the game, you would just get infinite gold. I never quite got that over the course of the set. I was close like 2 or 3 times. Never quite managed to get that though. Disco trait with the bringing back basically the Jade statues from set 7. Attack speed and healing. I thought that was fun. EDM, Also underpowered for most of the set, but really cool how the units could sample each other's abilities. Again, a lot of bugs associated with that, was mostly just abused when there were like 2 or 3 patches where Jax was really strong, so it's mostly just abused to get Jax recasting over and over again. But I did like the idea. It was certainly a cool idea. And then probably my favorite trait of the set, Jazz. The whole notion that they would just take Stand United, the old Stand United augment, and just turn it into a trait. That would be, excuse me, just kind of a base part of the game. That was really cool. It was overtuned on release. It got toned down in patches to a more reasonable amount. Also took out the ability to make the Jazz Spatula. But I thought it was pretty neat, and I thought, like I said, I think it was my favorite trait in this set because it just encouraged people to play flexibly, play a lot of traits, and you would get additional value out of doing so. So overall, good unit design, good trait design. I think they, as I said, clearly put a lot of time and effort into this in the set. And it ended up making a big difference. So kudos to the designers for putting in the effort, making sure that this was a good set in terms of that. I mean, there were some trait reprints, right? There were some that came back again. We had things like, what was in here that was in previous sets? Rapid Fire was back. Like Guardian, we'd pretty much had that before. Bruiser, the tank traits. Like some of this stuff are reprints, but it's not the end of the world to have some reprints as long as there's other things that are new and new gameplay to explore. But anyway, like I said, overall, good job. In terms of the actual gameplay, I have decided I'm going to look to go into a Disco Dazzler team composition. The reason for that is no one is playing this. It's uncontested in the lobby. And our portal that gives out units for free, we're all going to start getting a lot of 4 and 5 costs for free. And there's actually a lot of 4 and 5 costs that play into this team composition. So I'd want to play Blitzcrank. I'd want to play Twisted Fate. I'd want to play Ziggs. I'd want to play Alawi. I can even play Lucian for Jazz trait. So like there's a lot of 4 and 5 costs that can be played in this trait. So I have pretty good odds that I'm going to be able to take advantage of some of them. And for now, I'm just going to go to 6 and put Lulu on the board. And I'm hoping I can continue to win rounds and get more training, more gold for the, the target dummy, if I can get my escort quest gold. Okay. Other stuff I want to talk about. I want to praise the balance in this set. I've been very critical of the balance in a lot of the TFT sets, and frankly, that's because the balance has been kind of garbage in a lot of the TFT sets, but that was not the case in this one. I think that there's a good argument to be made that set 10 has had the best balance of any TFT set ever in its history. Overall, the whole set, just there was a lot of stuff that was playable in pretty much every patch. Now, it wasn't perfect. You know, some things tended to be a little too strong, little too weak in some of the patches. But by and large, I think over the course of the set, there was an awful lot of stuff that you could play. There wasn't like just the one comp that just crushed everything that there have been in so many other sets. And there, you really could play, I wouldn't say anything, but a very wide variety of different things in patch after patch after patch. Like this person here is playing 3-star Olaf, but fortunately they still have like a whole bunch of items on the bench. That's going to be enough to win this one. But like even in this game right now, like I'm playing Disco. I think there's 2 people playing Heartsteel. This person's playing Bruiser Olaf. We have, I think we have someone playing KDA. And then there's nobody's playing Country in this lobby. What else is there? Someone else is playing 8-Bit. And I think that those are all the main things that people are playing. I think, is someone playing Pentakill? I have to look back at that. But like even in this game, which is just like a little snapshot, I mean, there's like 6 different things that people are playing. This is, I'm reminded of like set 9 where they completely broke multicasters, and like in every lobby there'd be 5 people playing multicasters, and it was just so annoying because you knew everyone would be playing the same thing because it was so overpowered. And yeah, here's the person playing KDA. I thought there was someone playing KDA. They're not playing it very well, mind you. They're actually in a lot of trouble here, I think. Well, actually, no. Is this the person who has 56 HP? I think I'm up against the person who has 56 HP. They did find an RE. Yeah, as I said, this person's in a lot of trouble. They're kind of dying. But like I said, there's a lot of different things you could play, and the balance was not better in this set by coincidence. It wasn't just dumb luck that this set had very good balancing, as Olaf is going to murder this poor Annie. That was a deliberate decision, and it worked out because of 2 things that the developers did that were really good in this set. The first one was one of the more controversial aspects of this set, and that was shrinking the size of the bags. We mean by bag size changes, we mean how many units there are in the pool. in TFT. Again, if you're watching this video, you probably know this already, but everyone shares the same units in TFT. Everyone is picking them from the same pool. It's kind of like you're playing Scrabble and you're all taking tiles out of the box, right? There's only so many letters in a game of Scrabble. There's only so many champions in a game of TFT. So there is a limit to this. Also, by the way, I should have made Ionic Spark here. I really should have look to do that. I think I held this rod and made another item, but I really should have just made Ionic Spark here because I know I'm going to be playing a magic damage composition. That would have been better. Anyway, so like I said, there's only so many units in the pool, and in this set, the developers changed the size of how many units were in that pool. As they said, the bag size is how the developers have referred to this. That had been very stable for a long time. I think for like the last 5 or 6 sets, this had not been adjusted. So for example, the 1-cost units like the Yasuo that's in my store right now, for ages and ages and ages, there had been 29 of them in the pool, 29 of each unit. So there'd be like 29 Yasuos. I have Nami, she's a 1-cost, 29 Namis, etc. So it was pretty easy for multiple people to play the same thing. Like if you wanted to reroll for 3-star Nami, like I could go for that, and then another person could go for that, and then probably a third person could go for that as well. And in theory, all of us could hit because 999 is only 27. If there are 29 copies in the pool, that's actually enough for everybody to hit. It's going to be difficult, but it's not impossible. Here in this set, they shrunk the size of those bags. So instead of having 29 copies of the 1-cost, they went down to 22. So that was a pretty big change, and it was definitely noticeable that there were fewer copies of the units in there. So it was felt at every level. So like I said, for the 1-cost, they were basically enough for 2 people to 3-star a 1-cost. But it did get tough because if both of you had like if one person had 7 copies and another person had 8 copies, that's 15 out of 22. That's, that you're starting to get down to a relative handful of units left. Whereas before, 15 out of 29, it's like, well, there's still plenty of them in there. So it really made it feel like if you were contested, it was harder to hit. Same thing at the other ends of the spectrum, too. For the 4-cost units, there had been 12 of them for ages and ages. They went down to 10, from 12 to 10. So definitely made it a lot harder to hit these units, like a very noticeable decrease in terms of who could hit these. By the way, Lux and Lulu, can you kill this Gnar? I need to save the training dummy. We got to get that 3 gold. We got to protect the dummy. Come on, Lulu. You got this? You got this? All right, there we go. Whew, we got our 3 gold. Thank goodness. And then I'll sell the Tarek to get to 50 gold. Okay. So, like I said, at the upper end, it also was very noticeable because if there's only 10 copies of the 4-costs instead of there being 12 copies, it makes it a lot harder to hit your 2-stars, and also extremely difficult to hit your 3-stars because you had to have 9 out of 10 instead of 9 out of 12 to 3-star a 4-cost. This was really good for game balance. Now, it might have been frustrating for people who are trying to hit when they're contested. Obviously, it could be frustrating, but the whole point was the goal was not to contest other people. The goal was try to find comps that are uncontested because it made such a huge difference. If you're uncontested, you could really hit these units, but if you were contested, it was very difficult to hit the units. By the way, here I'm just going to get a Blitzcrank from the portal that gives us free units, so I'm just going to shift all my tank items over to Blitzcrank here. Like I said, we'll make the Sunfire. I'm going to make the Gargoyles, even though I don't think Gargoyles is great, but what else am I going to do with this? Like I said, could have been Ionic Spark. That probably would have been a better use, but like Evan Shroud's no good because this is a magic damage comp, so Evan Shroud's not going to do anything here. We don't care about shredding physical resistances. So like I said, huge incentive to play into uncontested team comps. If you were fighting people and you were contested, it was very hard to hit. But if you were uncontested, it was relatively easy to hit. So it really just, again, encouraged people to play flexibly. And it also served to help balance the game because it was kind of like a self-regulating behavior in terms of the gameplay. You couldn't have 5 people play the same comp because there just weren't enough units. They would all do horribly if they all tried to play the same thing. So as I said, it kind of naturally balanced the game. And as I said, I think it was one of the best changes that they made. So the good news is these bag size changes are going to carry over into set 10, into set 11, which is going to be the next one. And here I'm going to take Martyrs because it's really good for the late game. So as I said, I think that was a great thing, and it was one of the major reasons why balance was so much better. Also, I'll get back to the commentary in a second. I'm going to go level 8 and do my roll down here. So I am looking specifically to find a Twisted Fate or Blitzcrank. That would be nice. I could also take Lux. That would put me at 8 Lux actually as well. So just looking here, Sona's actually a possibility as well. Could play her. I really need one of these headliners to appear though. It's like, come on, Come on. Crowd Diver Z is actually a possibility as well, but no, not quite what I'm looking for. The Poppy would be nice. Oh, and then there we go. There is an EDM Lux. Now, I'd prefer Dazzler Lux here, but EDM Lux is perfectly playable. That gets me to 8 Luxes, so I'm happy to take that. And we'll put the EDM selector on Lux. Now I need to itemize Lux. These items were going to go on TF, but they can also go on Lux as well. So I'm reasonably pleased with them. And again, I shouldn't have put this on here. I should have saved that because I should have been thinking, like I said, Ionic Spark would be really good here. But like I said, now we've got 8 out of 9 Luxes. So we just need to find one more Lux, and then we'll slot in TF, and then hopefully we can go get another Blitzcrank, and then look to go to level 9. Nami with the Bubbles CC on the Olaf. Very nice here. Can we kill the Olaf? There we go. Bubbles for the win. Gotta CC that Olaf. He does not have a Quicksilver Sash. All right, there we go. Okay, so as I said, bag size changes, a really big improvement to the gameplay. Now, the other big improvement to the gameplay, the developers did not go crazy with the patches. Yeah, they actually did not have that many patches. There was only one B patch the entire split. I know that that sounds crazy, but there was only one time that they had a B patch over the entirety of the set. Or maybe it was 2, but they just did not do all the crazy hotfix nerfs. They did not do all the crazy buffs and nerfs and whatnot that they did in other sets. They kind of just let things ride. If something was a little overpowered, they were just kind of like, well, we'll get it in the next patch. So the game did not seesaw back and forth like a drunken sailor, as it so often does. That has happened in so many previous sets, and it just didn't happen in this set because they just didn't put out that many patches. Again, I can't put into words how much better this was to just not be doing crazy stuff all the time with the patches. So they did not do anywhere near as much balance thrashing in this set. They didn't put out a bunch of B patches. They didn't put out a bunch of hot fixes. They just kind of left things alone. And the gameplay is much better when that's the case. Like, much, much better when that's the case. So I'm really glad that the developers just actually backed off, let the gameplay breathe a little bit, and not tinker constantly the way that they've done in so many of the previous sets. And of course, it also helped that the gameplay was in better shape, that they didn't need to jump in and do hot fix patches constantly. So the fact that they actually backed off, did not do crazy balance thrashing, that was also a huge, and I mean a huge deal in terms of improving this set and making it better. So kudos to them for managing that. And I'm glad that they were able to restrain themselves and not do that. About the only thing I can think of, there was one patch where they buffed all the Disco units and all the Dazzler units, and Disco was like super OP for one patch, and then the next patch they immediately nerfed all those units again. So that was about the only time I can think of that. So it wasn't really that bad. In terms of the gameplay that's going on, I just need to find one more Lux, so I'm really hoping I can find one more. I'm going to go ahead and try to roll for it. Let's see if I can hit. And then I do hit. So I was like, okay, with 3-star Lux, I'm pretty safe to go level 9 here. So I'm going to look to do that. And I think Lux can carry me there. I also have the 2-star Blitz for frontline. So yeah, I think we got a carry. We got a tank. I think we're good to try and econ now up to level 9. All right. Other things that helped improve the balance of this set and I think are worth commenting on. They made it so spatulas, emblems, Tome of Traits, they made them very hard to get in this set. This was a wild contrast to set number 9, where particularly in set 9.5, what was it? There was the Earth legend that became super overpowered towards the end of the set, and everybody would be running around with like 4 different emblems in every single game. You just pull your Tome of Trait at the start of the game, and then you could easily get like 2 more emblems throughout the course of the game. And so people were making like 9 Shurima boards, 9 Demacia, and the whole thing was just ridiculous. But in this set, that was not the case. They made it so none of the augments gave emblems. And again, this was a huge benefit for balance. The emblems might be fun, but putting traits that units do not normally, putting emblems and adding traits to units that they don't normally have is one of the biggest ways that causes the balance to break in this game. So by just kind of taking that out, the game was so much better balanced. And again, it wasn't impossible to get these, but you couldn't get Tome of Traits from Augment. You couldn't get Spatulas from Augments. You couldn't get +1 to a trait from, like, they took out like the hearts from previous sets, or like +1 to a trait. So all of that really made the game much better balanced. And one of the signs of how important that was is the one place where that was not the case was in double up mode, because they kind of left double up mode alone. They don't put much attention on double up mode, and they had all the gift rounds unchanged from before, so it was very easy to gift your partner spatulas and Tome of Traits. And so double up was dominated by people making double emblems for 10 KDA or double emblems for 10 pentakill, and it was pretty silly. It was the one thing that we did not enjoy about double up was how easy it was to get to like 10 KDA. It was pretty silly. But outside of that, spatulas were very rare, and when you saw them on a carousel, you know, it was pretty much guaranteed people were going to grab them if they were on a carousel, because they were so hard to get and so powerful when they did show up. I really believe that this is what TFT should be like. It should be hard to get spatulas. They should be rare, because when they are rare, you can make them powerful. You can make it very impactful to get them. When they're dropping from the sky like candy, it waters down the gameplay so much that it's not really fun. And it just makes the gameplay, number one, less balanced, and also makes it less special. Like, that's one of the things that people have to keep in mind. When some things are random, when some things don't show up very often, it's actually better for the gameplay when that happens. Anyway, here I was really hoping for a sword, because I desperately wanted to make a gunblade for Lux's last item, but it's just not an option, unfortunately. Gunblade would have been so good here, because every time Lux ulted, she would have healed herself and also healed the tank line. That is exactly what I needed, but it's just not an option here, so I have to fall back on... I do have to make an item on her, and so I'm going to fall back on the Archangels. Lux is like the last unit alive in most of these fights, so the Archangels does get good value. It also causes her first cast to go off, but definitely it would be better if I had the Gunblade. It would be significantly better. By the way, this Riven does have a QSS, but apparently not able to get through the tank line, and Lux just bursts her down. By the way, Lux's ult can crit. Her headliner ability is that her ult can crit. I actually did not know that until I played this game and I checked her. So yeah, she actually does not need Jeweled Gauntlet. She can crit anyway, because that is her headliner bonus. Anyway, so like I said, making spatulas, emblems hard to get, great for balance, and also just helped make this set like more straightforward to play. So then, one last thing I'll mention is these are kind of minor things, but even with all its problems, Double Up was really, really fun to play. I played a tremendous amount of Double Up in this set, and the proof that this was a good set is how many Double Up games I played. I played, I think, about 80 Double Up games, and actually did manage to make it to Master in Double Up, which is about the top 0.5% of the player base. So it's pretty hard to make it there. And it was a lot of fun, but I wouldn't have done that if the gameplay wasn't fun. Like I wasn't far off Master in like set 9, but like I didn't want to play to Master in set 9. The game wasn't fun to play. It was pretty silly. So again, just kind of a sign that the the gameplay was a lot of fun and in great shape. And I guess I'll also toss in that the music was really cool. This was a music-based set, and it was really fun that the music would change based on what you're playing. That was a cool idea. Unfortunately, I would have won this fight, but Lux decided not to shoot it all off for like the entire back half of the fight. So yeah, a little bit annoying. I knew that person would make it too. That person was guaranteed to be like top 2 or 3, just based on the fact that they hit the 3-star Olaf pretty early on. So... cool music stuff. I did like it how when you played different stuff, you would get different music, and nice little touch for this music-based set. As I said, good theming in this set. They pulled out all the music skins, and it was not honestly, it wasn't the easiest to tell the units apart. I did miss that in set 9. You could the game used all the base skins. But the portrait art was reasonable in this game. It wasn't too bad. It wasn't as wacky as like set 8 or set 3, where it was really hard to tell which champion was which. So a little bit closer. I guess Lux was like the hardest to see, because this Lux skin doesn't even look remotely like Lux. Anyway, so that covered all the stuff that was good. As I said, most of this video was going to be about the stuff that was good, because it was a really good set overall. So let's now cover some of the things where the gameplay came up a little bit short. As I said, not going to be a ton of these because it was a very good set overall, but we always have time to nitpick. So let's go ahead and cover some of the things that maybe weren't quite as good in this set. All right, number 1 is about the headliner mechanic. Even though this was a great mechanic overall, as someone gets the stupid set eliminating someone little animation. Even though the headliner mechanic was really good overall, the biggest problem was the rules were a little too complicated. By the way, there's my Gunblade that I wanted on Lux, but I was not able to get it on Lux. Maybe if I got an item remover, but probably not. The headliner rules were a little too complicated, and the reason for that is the developers put in a bunch of things that were intended to smooth out some of the random elements, but this stuff was all under the hood, and it was not documented, and it was very poorly explained, but a lot of the rules were actually pretty important to understand if you were playing the game. So they had things like if you saw a headliner in the shop, when you saw that unit again as a headliner, they would have their other trait doubled. So like I grabbed EDM Lux here, but if Lux showed up in my shop again, she would be guaranteed to have Dazzler as her trait. So I didn't want to pass that up. Obviously, I had already rolled most of my gold. I wasn't going to roll past a Lux and just try to wait for a Dazzler Lux, which I think would have been better here. I could have played 4 Dazzler. That is not something that was ever explained in game. That was just something that people realized from playing. That if a headliner showed up in the store, the next time they showed up, it would be a different trait doubled. Again, that was to smooth out some of the random aspects of the game, but like it's kind of important to know that, and that was never told to anyone while playing the game. Similarly, if you had a unit show up as a headliner, that unit would not show up again as a headliner for a certain number of shops. For the 4 costs, I believe it was 5 shops until they would show up again. For the less expensive units, I think it was 7 shops until they would show up again. So yeah, that was not explained at all. But again, it was intended to smooth out some of the randomness. And like, it's not bad that was the case. You wouldn't want to have a shop. It's like, oh, I hit Gnar headliner, reroll the shop, something else. Reroll the shop a second time, Gnar headliner. Reroll the shop a third time, Gnar headliner. Like, you wouldn't want that to happen. But like, it's a rule that's completely undocumented, so it's not great that so much about what was happening was not explained. There was also this rule whereby for much of the set, particularly the first half of the set, you could get around these restrictions by buying a unit and then selling them. So people would have to like buy units and then sell them to remove some of this locking out mechanic, which was really wacky, and like people were completely playing the game differently based on rules that were not intended. Now, they did take that out of the game eventually, but still, it's kind of wild that like a lot of what was going on was taking place due to rules that were not explained to the player at all. So that's, yeah, less than great. Just to get away from the analysis for a second here, note that I moved my entire team over to the right-hand side. I knew I could potentially hit this board, and the reason was so that Lux would hit the Caitlyn with her ult. So Lux manages to get the snipe off on Kate. 1 ult finishes her off, and then Riven is going to go down. Now, can we finish off this Mordekaiser? And 1 more ult. There we go. And this person's actually going to get knocked out of the lobby. I 100% do not win this fight if Lux is over on the left-hand side. So that's positioning for the win. I actually win the fight and knock that player out of the lobby in a round that I, like I said, would not have won without repositioning, because Lux had to snipe that Caitlyn without taking out Kate. Kate would have killed everybody. But yeah, positioning for the win. All right, so the headliner rules. While headliner as a mechanic was great, there were too many hidden rules that were not documented. The developers really should have just put somewhere in the client at the beginning of the set, here's the rules that are taking place under the hood. We want everybody to be on the same page. They did explain them eventually, but they did it in like a Reddit post. It's like, come on, like people aren't going to see that. You got to put it in the client. And in addition to that, just because they said that it worked that way, it actually kind of didn't work that way. Like they laid out in a post, here's how the rules work, but it turned out that they were actually wrong because the game was bugged out. So yeah, a lot of problems with stuff like that throughout the set. Anyway, oh, here's really nice. I'm gonna hit 2-star Zac and 2-star Ziggs. That's really big. So now I'm definitely gonna try to put a item on the Ziggs here. I'm still looking for more TFs, by the way. I've only seen 1 TF the whole game. But Ziggs can definitely fill in for that. Ziggs is actually going to be secondary carry now because he's going to be pretty strong. I wouldn't mind some more tank items either, but the only tank item here is Protector's Vow, and I don't think that's that great. So we'll itemize the Ziggs instead. All right. So like I said, first thing, headliner rules, not documented, not explained well enough. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the portals, because the portals carried over from the previous set. They carried over from set 9. Honestly, the portals were not that bad. This is the thing where everybody votes at the start of the stage. I mean, honestly, if you're going to have to do some kind of a way of starting out the initial carousel, this is not a bad way to do that. Although I'm one of the few people who kind of like everybody clicks on the initial carousel to get an item, but whatever. This is probably better than that. My issue with the portals more so was that the portals actually got less balanced over time. When the set released, the portals were actually very well balanced, and they kind of took that out over time. By the way, I'm going to put in Lucian here so we can get Jazz trait going. There we go. That's going to be better than Sentinel trait. Sentinel trait's not really doing anything here. And then we're just still looking for that TF, that last TF, not that TF's doing a whole lot. So the portals actually got more unbalanced over time. The initial portals were pretty well balanced, but they replaced a lot of them with ones that just drop more loot. Like lots and lots of loot. And this one that we have in this game is a good example. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but this is a great example of it because it's the portal that, every 2 times per stage, you just get stuff for free. And this is really bad for gameplay because sometimes it can hit your board really hard, and sometimes it just whiffs you and it's useless. Like earlier in the game, I got 2 Luxes for free and I got a Blitzcrank for free. Like all that stuff was really, really good for my setup. But on this round, I just got a Kiana for free. And like that does absolutely nothing for my board. So it injects a humongous amount of randomness into the game by having these champs just completely randomly pop up on your board. It's not good for the gameplay. It degrades the gameplay. It makes it weaker. It just turns the gameplay into more of a slot machine, basically. It's more of just dumb luck who's getting what, essentially. So my overall setup was I didn't like this very much, but the problem is the player base did like this quite a bit. And you could tell this because the portals that gave out the most loot were always the ones that most people went to. Like, again, if you saw this particular portal, it was the same thing. The whole, everybody except me ran over to the one that gave out all the loot. So it's a little bit depressing that that's the case, but it's just one of those things that I've figured out over time is most of the players are not actually looking for a balanced experience. What they're just looking for is the most free stuff possible. As I said, it's kind of disappointing, but Riot does know their players, and their players want lots of loot, as much free loot as they can possibly get. That's what they want. So Riot has delivered on them, and they're gonna cater to the portals that are most popular. So loot fiesta for everybody, hooray! That's what we ended up getting. Not really what I wanted, but like I said, that's kind of what the players did, so that's the direction they went in. They also changed the Heartsteel trait to make it more loot box focused. They made it so people could do the whole raise the stakes thing, whereby if they continued losing rounds, then they could get like a super cash out. Again, bad for gameplay balance, but apparently people wanted that. And the word was that the players in East Asia, by the way, I'm getting so many Kianas. It's 3 Kianas. Again, completely useless units. Other players are getting units that can actually benefit them. And it's just frustrating when other people get stuff they can use and you get stuff that you can't possibly use. Like this person was able to get to level 10 and now they have an Alawi headliner for their front line in a 4 bruiser comp. It's like, oh, that's not good. That looks pretty strong. They made it there on 5 HP. So oh man, so close. I actually hit them in a ghost round last round. If I had hit them in a real round and beaten them, they'd just be out of the lobby. But they just narrowly managed to get there to level 10. Like I said though, so they just really tried to shift things over to being more. Oh wow, Lux completely whiffed her ult. She missed both Lucian and Ezreal. That's pretty. That's pretty tilting. Anyway, so yeah, they really shifted things over to being more loot box focused. And the word was that, particularly in China, people didn't like this set because it was less loot box focused. Like people in China literally were not playing the set because there wasn't like crazy gambling mechanics in it. So I understand why they felt like they had to do this, but it's kind of depressing from like a gameplay standpoint that making the game more balanced actually made it less popular in the most popular in like TFT's biggest region. So that's kind of depressing because it means for the future we are almost certainly going to continue getting heavy gambling mechanics because that's what the players wanted in the most popular region for TFT. And that's what they wanted. So we're just gonna see more of that. So kind of sad, kind of depressing, but I understand why the developers did what they did. Similarly, Heartsteel was clearly left too strong for too long, the Heartsteel trait. And I think that this was deliberate, and I think it feeds back into what I said before. It was pretty clear that Heartsteel was not the strongest trait. It actually did not perform amazingly in the data, but in terms of actually winning lobbies, it was very difficult to win a lobby if you weren't playing Heartsteel, because Heartsteel just provides so much extra loot over the course of the game. Very difficult to win the lobby if you are not actually playing Heartsteel. So, and the developers were okay with this. They left this in place for ages and ages, and I'm convinced that this was not an accident. I'm pretty sure that they deliberately wanted Heartsteel to be a little bit overtuned because, again, that's what the player base wanted, particularly in China, which, as I said, really likes the whole gambling mechanics. I think that they deliberately wanted this, so I think that they left Heartsteel overtuned deliberately for a length of time. And as I said, this is one of the things that's one of the lessons from the set is the gameplay clearly can be balanced. Like, this was a very balanced set, and in particular, when the set came out on release, it was extremely well balanced. So it's very clear that the designers can balance the gameplay if they want. But it's also equally clear that most of the time, they don't want to balance the gameplay. If the gameplay is not balanced, it's not like this is a coincidence. They're probably doing it on purpose. By the way, here, I, again, would like a tank item for Zach, but there's no tank items here, so I just have to put an item on TF, so best I can do. So like I said, the financial incentives and the gameplay incentives do not always run in the same direction, and when they come in conflict, they definitely tilt towards the financial incentives, which, again, I understand it's a business, but if the gameplay is not balanced, it's probably because they didn't want it to be balanced, and they were, in fact, they are probably deliberately breaking the balance because they think they make more money that way. I mean, we talked about that for a while now, but the incentives are in the wrong direction in terms of gameplay purposes. So, as I said, all that is kind of disappointing, but it is what it is. It's not going to change at this point. You just have to make your peace with it. All right, so this is a pretty close fight, but the problem is Lux does not do especially well. And by the way, I get knocked out on exactly 0 health. I was close to getting another shot there, but Lux does not do well against Alawi. The tentacles bait her into hitting the wrong targets. She does not do well against Yorick, and Yorick had the ghoul spam going. The other thing that hurt me there was I couldn't get the Gunblade for Lux. I actually think I might have won that fight if I'd had Gunblade on Lux, because, again, she would have been healing herself and healing the front line on every single cast, but sometimes you just can't get the items that would be most optimal. You got to play around what you get, and I think I was still pretty happy with how this game played out. Who won? The Heartsteel player, of course, because they had enough econ to go level 10. So yeah, there it is again. Heartsteel wins once again. Well, anyway, once again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. It was a really good set. I'm looking forward to seeing what we get in set 11. Until then, take care, folks, and I'll see you again soon.